to take a look at the agenda and the meeting minutes from last week. First, I will check, are there any modifications or additions, changes to the agenda that we need to make? Okay, not hearing any, and I think we'll just wrap this into one action if we can. So I'll just add, are there any changes, additions, comments to the meeting minutes from last month? All right, hopefully it sounds working, but hearing nothing there either. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for this meeting and the meeting minutes from last month?
This is Virgil.
This is Commissioner Casilius. I'll motion that we approve the agenda for this meeting and the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
And Commissioner Page will second that.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you, commissioners. I will do roll. Commissioner Weaver.
Aye.
Commissioner Pint.
Aye.
Commissioner Casilius.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
And I haven't seen Veerling or Phil. Or Shay. All right.
Oh,
Hi, Commissioner Beerling here.
Oh, thanks, Commissioner Veerling. And your A or nay?
Aye.
Thank you.
okay, then is that everybody that we have on?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, then that motion has passed and we can move on to our agenda. Next, it looks like we have partner updates. Do we have any of our partners on that have an update they would like to provide? Okay, hearing none, and it doesn't appear that anyone is unmuting. We can move on. Oh,
I was gonna say, when you say partners, are you talking like I'm with the Watershed District? Is that, would we be considered a partner?
Yeah.
I imagine that's what Vanessa has it on for. So any of our, yep.
Okay, well, just a quick update. We did pass our resolution for our levy for next year, our maximum levy. And I think we ended up at about 8.1%. And so that's been taken care of, and see what happens when we get to our truth and taxation hearing.
Do we have any follow-up questions for Bruce? All right, thanks for that update. Any other partners on that wanted to provide an update? Okay, then let's move on to staff reports. And as usual, we will start out with Troy and the Scott SWC.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. And good afternoon, commissioners. My apologies, first of all, that this did not get in the original packet. I had prepared the email. I had it attached last Wednesday, and I must have got distracted because I never hit the send button. And I'm wondering to myself, why is Dami not saying thank you or like replying got it here, because she never received it. So my apologies. But I will go through some highlights in the report and then stand for any questions if there are any. Starting off with technical assistance and cost share requests. So these are the requests from residents throughout the county that have interest in getting some answers or information, or maybe putting in a project in the ground. We're dealing with about 180 or so, which is down about 70 from 2 years ago and down about 20 from last year at this time. If you can see the number of projects, which is represented by the cohort bar, that's a little bit smaller for each month. That's the number of projects we have. As you can see, the number of projects has remained fairly steady for the last year and a half, even though the total number of people we're working with has reduced. So the workload in that regard is more sustainable. When we're getting above the 200 mark, it gets tight, and certainly above 250, we're really scratching hard. But right now we're at a fairly sustainable level as far as the number goes. Under soil health and cover crops, so we spent the last month coordinating the aerial spraying program or seeding program, and that's where we talked to a lot of our producers who have done cover crops or who may be interested to see if they want to have cover crops flown onto certain fields. It just makes it a lot easier. They don't have to plan for it. They don't need it. They don't have to set aside time or have time to do it. It's just kind of a easy way to implement cover crops. And we actually flew that on, I want to say, two weeks ago. As of today, yeah, about 2 weeks ago. And we did, I think, close to 300 total acres. Clean water education program. So we are in the midst of Outdoor Education Day. In fact, today was the first of 4 days this week that we'll be out at Cedar Lake Farm Park. We have one new school this year and anticipate pushing through about 1,300, give or take, students over the 3-day period or 4-day period. And related to the Outdoor Ed Day, we finally got an executed agreement with Mackin Education Services, which is the firm we're hiring to really look under the hood, if you will, at our K-5 through 8 education programming. Really look closely at our curriculum and some of the methods we use at Outdoor Ed, and as well as conservation in classroom, to make sure that we're appropriately supplementing in-school learning and are appropriate for the meeting the education standards for the state of Minnesota. So we'll be working with them over the next year, and that is being funded by a grant that the WMO has through a watershed-based implementation fund. We documented the conservation efforts and application for the 2022 conservation leaders. That leader is Rob Casey, and they will be recognized at the both in locally through articles in the scene, as well as at the state association conservation award banquet. Moving on, no inventory and assessment specific to the Scott WMO area, although we did meet with staff and identify the Ravine Stream subwatershed as the next area where we would focus a subwatershed assessment on. It would be similar nature to the ones we did for Cleary, Thole, and Roberts over the past couple of years. You'll see some activity in the zoning and livestock operation assistance. I won't go into detail there. But as far as the buffer law, we continue to perform our annual buffer inspections on Area 2. That's the northern half of Scott County. We did identify 2 areas of potential violation. And so what we do is we send them a letter, letting them know this is what we are seeing, and then basically open the conversation to make sure we can rectify that. If you're interested in where those 2 are, just give me a call and I'll get you that specific location information afterwards. Skipping to water quality. So we continue to do our bi-weekly water sampling at Brewery Creek, as well as on Markley Lake. The water levels on Markley Lake are so low, we had to move the monitoring equipment one more time. We did it last year, and now the water's even lower, so we had to move even further into the lake than we had originally placed it. That's always a fun thing. We did our macrovertebrate collection on Pika Creek. That was part of the Scott County Highway project, our construction project for the 16941 revamp. We did not do any groundwater observation wells. This wasn't this past month. It wasn't on the schedule. We do them 4 times a year, so I think the next one could be October or November. I'm not sure which one. As far as precipitation, through our volunteer monitoring program, you can see the month of August, which is our last full reporting month. We had actually a slight bit higher than average rainfall here at the Jordan Field Office Station. Construction erosion control, we continue to do inspections at our typical summer pace with well over 250 inspections being completed. And the number of new plan reviews remains at a pretty decent clip as well, with 20 new plan reviews. So those would represent the plans that are going to be approved and added to the inspection schedule in subsequent months. Wetland Conservation Act, we have not a really high workload, but a steady workload in that regard. This year was a little bit later than normal, but we're expecting to get a flush of more wetland applications in as the fall draws near, and that would be typical. The wetland healing and wetland bank, we did have the consultant complete their annual plant community and vegetation survey. We typically get a report later in the year or early next year. Equipment rental program, you can see the drills numbers there for 2022. We're approaching 1,500 acres. The equipment is out in the field, particularly the John Deere no-till drill. We're doing a lot of cover crops this time of year, so we expect to get a couple hundred, if not 1,000 more acres before the year's end. Cost share grant status, so you can see the numbers for the technical assistance and cost share program. Between the soil and water conservation district and the WMO, we're sitting at about almost $670,000 in available cost share. So of the 1.164 million total, we have spent about 46% of the soil and water funds and about 59% of the available Scott WMO funds. And then finally, just reporting for September, the actions by the SWC board, we certified $34,000 in payments for projects within the WMO and approved about almost $48,000 in new applications. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll try to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Troy. Any questions for Troy? All right, hearing none, we can move on to Vanessa with WMO updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Let me know if you can't hear me or you need me to speak up. I don't often speak into this microphone, so. Similar to Prior Lake, Spring Lake Watershed District, thanks Bruce for that update. We really appreciate it. The WMO's preliminary levy for 2023 was approved the September 20th board meeting. We are sitting at about 0.98% tax impact. So that's kind of our tax rate for us. If you remember, you approved the preliminary levy for recommendation to the board in August. So you will see that again before the end of the year for the final levy and budget. And that's been certified with the county. We are also in the process of updating our fee schedule. So it's not something we typically talk about on a regular basis, but the other area we run obviously is the Natural Resources Department for the county. And with the increasing work and cost of work, that program is no longer really sustaining itself, especially since we haven't really updated our fees in many, many, many years. So currently, for example, it's probably running at about $130,000 deficit. So we're looking at updating our fee schedules to kind of try to bring that back into compliance with the cost of the program. So this is a program we try to run to zero out at the end of every year. It's not a program that we want to carry any balances. It's also not a program where we're trying to make any money. The program is just supposed to cover its own costs related to erosion sediment control, planning, development, MS4, and then the county's natural resources responsibilities. So that is another activity that we're working on that needs to be done by the end of, by mid-October this year. Those are kind of our larger updates for the last month. As Troy mentioned, Outdoor Education Days is this week, so staff will be out this week at Outdoor Education Days helping to teach the kids out there, and it's going to be a great year again. We're really looking forward to it. Staff is also out at the Children's Water Festival in the State Fairgrounds on Wednesday, so we'll be out there all day. The county, as well as the other metro counties, all support the Children's Water Festival, so that's another great opportunity for us to get out there to educate our local youth. So we'll be busy this week, so if we're a little slow in getting back to you, we do apologize, but we're just out in the field working hard. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Yes, you guys certainly sound busy. All right, any questions for Vanessa?
This is Pam. I don't have any questions, but I was at the park thing last year when they held it, and it was really fun to watch the kids. They were very engaged, and all of the people that led the individual activities really did a great job. So if you haven't been out there to witness it, it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Okay, I think with that, then we can move on to our ongoing business. Ryan, you're up first with your project updates.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. Just a few updates today. One, we've got a EPA grant that we were awarded last year. And with that, we identified 3 different watersheds that we were going to focus our efforts within. It's Pika Creek, Porter Creek, and Cedar Lake. And so with the Cedar Lake watershed, we had identified one wetland restoration as a potential project. It's one where we've been working with the landowners for a number of years based off of a sub-watershed assessment that the Soil and Water completed, had identified this wetland. And we had reached out to them a number of years ago. They were thinking of developing that piece of land, and then just weren't ready at that time to go forward with the wetland restoration. Fast forward to this grant, we had put it as its own line item within the grant, so had funds that were specific to the project in identifying it. Upon reaching out to those landowners again, they're just not ready at this time either. So I think that we'll give them their space, and maybe that conversation will happen again in the future, and we can get that project on the ground. But in the meantime, we've got dollars allocated towards it with this grant that now, at least in this first phase, which ends in 2024, we feel pretty confident that the project won't be installed from now till then. So we are now looking at, where could we spend those funds? Melissa had done some work reaching out to the Cedar Lake Improvement District to see if there was any projects they knew about that could be a fit. And so I think that in the end, there are still projects that we know about in the watershed, and we'll continue to pursue those. But we're looking to expand that Cedar Lake watershed into the larger Middle Sand Creek watershed. So it's not excluding Cedar Lake. Cedar Lake is still within Middle Sand Creek watershed, but it's going to obviously expand the boundaries of where we can spend those funds by quite a bit, and it will help us kind of get those projects moving. Being 2 years out, now is the prime time to get projects encumbered, and it still gives us ample time to actually put those projects in the ground. So with that being said, we're working with MPCA staff on, it's a work order, they call it. It's basically, amending where we can spend the funds. And so we'll continue to do that, and I'll update the commissioners here once that's been approved, if we obviously get approval of it. Second item, it's been a couple years since we looked at the Quarry Creek Ravine Stabilization Project. So for the commissioners that have been around, if you probably recall that name, and for any new commissioners, it's a large ravine stabilization that we had completed in 2016 in Blakely Township. It was, I think, roughly about 2,600 feet of ravine, 2 different ravines called Quarry Creek is the creek that is flowing through the ravine. And so two different branches of it we had stabilized with a large detention structure at the upper end and then a lot of rock checks down the ravine themselves to sort of slow water and accumulate sediment. And I'm pleased to announce that everything looks good out there. No erosion, nothing that I noticed that needs attention at this time. So just want to share that with the group. It's been, I think, 2 years since we had looked at it. So there was one area that I'm just going to keep an eye on. And so I did talk with the landowner at the downstream end and said, I'll make plans to go out there again next year. Nothing major out of 2,600 feet. It was about a 1 foot by 1 foot section. So nothing crazy. I just want to kind of take a look at it. Our macroinvertebrate monitoring program. So that program, we expanded it to 2 more sites this year, one upstream of the falls on Sand Creek in the city of Jordan, and another on Pika Creek. So one is on public property that we could access it above the falls, and then the Pika Creek, we actually worked with a private landowner to gain access to the creek for sampling. So those are all done. We were looking at one other site on Ravine Stream, and there was a couple spots on West Ravine that we looked at. The creek is dried up on West Ravine, and so with that stream, I think we're going to hold off till next year to kind of make a decision on do we want to sample that stream, and if so, we might need to go out there earlier in the year to do so. Or is there potentially another site from now till then that we can identify and get access to it? There's very little for public access on that stream. There was one spot that I checked out, but it was pretty dry, and I don't know if the habitat would have really met the criteria that we're kind of looking for. Last piece is that I did go out and take a look at our phase 2 stream bank stabilization project. So this one is near the golf course, the Ridges at Sand Creek Golf Course, just south of Jordan. And that project, if you remember, there were 2 private landowners we worked with, and then the Scott WMO actually purchased a parcel to sort of facilitate the project, and it led to us being able to harvest trees off the parcel to be installed in our staging area. So it was really beneficial to the project, and just alone harvesting trees paid for a large portion of the dollars that we would have spent otherwise hauling in trees. The idea is that when we purchased it, we were potentially looking at selling it down the road after the project got established. And the project is fairly well established. However, 2 of the downstream structures have succumbed to beavers, eliminating some of our trees that were on the structures. And so the other structures weren't really affected by that. And so I think the consensus so far is that we do want to get trees established. It's a big part of the long-term stabilization of them. And so I think our plan now is to have some trees replanted on those 2 structures and then monitor them for some time. So, I think that is going to take a minimum of at least a year, possibly more, even to get vegetation established on those structures, and then we can reevaluate, the potential sale or not sale of that parcel at that time. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Questions for Ryan?
Hey, Ryan, this is Commissioner Schmidt. I was just, in regards to Quarry Creek, I was just wondering what you saw out there in regards to the sediment holding pond or areas.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schmidt, so are you talking like the rock check dams, how they're doing it in terms of holding sediment back?
Yep, correct.
Yeah, excellent. So some of the structures, so the intent is that those structures could become all the way buried to where you might not be able to see the rock at some point because it's covered in sediment, and that's what they're designed to do. I didn't notice anything that's fully covered yet, but there is quite a bit of sediment accumulating in front of them, which is great. And the front half of some of the structures was getting buried. So you're only seeing kind of the tail end of the structure when you would be standing downstream of it looking upstream. You can see the rock on the back end of them, but then they do start to get buried, and some of them are pretty well buried. So it was my opinion from being out there that it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, capture that sediment and then slowly step that water down. Um, and the vegetation is pretty well established. The natives on the edges are really good. So all in all, I was very pleased to see kind of how it looks.
When those get filled up or full, are those intended to be cleaned out then to keep those working, or is it just a one time they get filled up and it continues on from there? It just works naturally.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schmidt, so they are not intended to be cleaned out. That doesn't mean that at a future evaluation, if we notice something that they couldn't be cleaned out, but they are designed to sort of act as a stabilized step, if you will, so like a series of steps. So yes, they will fill up, but they will still flush some sediment out, so they self-clean a little bit. And so they will push some sediment through, but the overall goal is that, you know, the reduction in sediment loss is significantly reduced by the ravine not incising, which would be like cutting downward. And then obviously creating unstable side slopes. And so that's kind of the biggest thing is creating that stable toe for the ravine, and then hopefully at some point, you know, vegetation will start to establish itself on those side slopes. Moving up, we're still pretty early in the process for that. You know, all of our larger toe stabilizations where we're hoping to get that vegetation working up the slope. It's happening, but it is a very slow process. You know, for a tree to become really established, you know, it takes a number of years, and we're only, you know, a handful post construction. So hopefully that answers your question, but no, we shouldn't have to clean them out, but it's not that we wouldn't if need be.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I had a question too on the last site. Do you need to bring out an exterminator or do trapping to get rid of some of the beavers so you don't continue to lose trees out there?
Madam Chair, it's a good question. So we did not direct anything. One of the private landowners has, I guess, what do I want to say it? Brought on the services of a trapper, and they were fairly successful at getting rid of the beavers, from what he tells me. But you know, time will tell, I guess. If all of a sudden we do replant and it happens again, I guess that's something we'll have to look at. Otherwise, if you know of any trees that beavers don't like, we could plant those on the structures too. I'm also looking for trees that cows don't like either, for a different site. So I think they're
Plastic
far and few
ones.
between.
Just put in plastic ones,
Yeah.
fake trees.
That would work.
Ryan, this is Virgil. I've got a lot of experience with beavers on some of my properties, and I do believe that I've never seen one actually eating or damaging a pine tree of any kind. So kind of keep that in mind, maybe.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Pint, thank you. Yes, and I plan to do some research too, and just see if we can't find something that works. It's slightly odd that they targeted 2 of the 5 structures and left the other ones alone. I'm also hoping just by maybe a lot of plantings that they can't take them all out. You know, if we overplant to what we're actually hoping for, even if they do come in, if we thought the structure needed 20 trees or 15 trees, we double it. And even if they do take some out, that some maybe have gotten big enough and have established well enough. Especially like willows. If we can get willows growing, they could chew the willow down in a, you know, a sprout coming off the root takes hold elsewhere. So it's sort of nature's way of combating the beavers, trying to take rid of all the trees that they'll create their own trees on their own.
Mhm. Okay, any further questions for Ryan? All right, Ryan, thanks so much. Moving on to Melissa's project updates.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I have a few updates for our Aquatic Invasive Species Program. On Saturday, September 17th, on McMahon Lake, our inspector found a zebra mussel violation. So the inspector found plants stuck to the trailer and under the boat of a person who was trying to launch. Some of the plants were removable by hand, but others were not. So upon removing some of those plants, the inspector found a lot of zebra mussels attached to the plants. So the inspector informed the boat owner, who was accompanied by 2 sons that were with him, what he had found, and that he can't allow him to launch because of the zebra mussels in his boat until he brought the boat to be decontaminated. And the boat owner said that he was last on Prior Lake. And we know Prior Lake is has zebra mussels. So the boat owner was initially kind of confused by the denied launch, but he cooperated with the inspector. So the inspector referred him to the DNR website where he could find, the closest decontamination site to clean the boat, before entering another water body. What was a little bit disturbing is as the boater was leaving, the inspector overheard the 2 sons talking about what other lake they could go on today since they were denied launch at McMahon. So we fear that, it's possible that zebra mussels might got introduced to a different lake. But I did forward the violation and the information to the Scott County Sheriff's Office for follow-up. So I'll just wait to hear from them on whether they were able to do that or not. Our watercraft inspections will be wrapping up next weekend. As long as the weather is good, they will finish up their hours this coming weekend with inspections. And lastly, from the AIS program, last month I had given you an update about the Starry Trek program, which is operated by the University of Minnesota, and the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District hosted that event this year. And basically, they had enough volunteers to check multiple lakes, so not only in the district, but also in the WMO. And I did get those results from Shauna at the district, and happy to say that there was no new AIS found by volunteers, at least around the public access areas. They basically just look around the shoreline at the access areas. But so I guess that was good news, along with the bad news that we got. Moving on to our 9 Elements grant, the one small task in that grant is to do some kind of carp management or carp engagement activity on Cedar Lake. I did contact the chair of the Cedar Lake Improvement District Board, and I will be attending their October board meeting, which is next week, to discuss the recommendations in their recent carp study conducted by WSB, and that was funded by the Lake Improvement District, to talk about which recommendations may be eligible for the grant and whether the LID would like to move forward with, the recommendations that were in there. Some of which, may be dependent on what the grant will pay for. So more to come on that. And then lastly, sorry, Dami, I kind of changed up my notes here. I sent Dami my notes in advance because I have a picture I would like her to show when she has a minute for. Okay, awesome. So the last update I have for you is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has this chloride display, and we will be hosting this display for 3 months starting in November. It's an educational display on how to reduce your salt use over, winter maintenance activities. It's geared more towards the homeowner or general public. Um, and so it will be located somewhere kind of in the new atrium area of the government center here, but for 3 months. And so we will advertise probably in the county scene and maybe in some local newspapers and on our website, social media, so the public can come here and check it out and hopefully learn something. And that's all I have. So open to any questions if anybody has any.
Thanks, Melissa. Any questions for Melissa? Okay, I think hearing none, we can move on. Next up is the One Watershed One Plan update, and that is myself and Commissioner Pint. So that team only meets every other month as of now. So we haven't met again since the last Planning Commission meeting. But at the last Planning Commission meeting, if you recall, I introduced the discussion that we had on prioritizing concerns in our watershed. So the way the planning works is we will talk through the different concerns that we have in our watershed, because we need to narrow down our focus so we can say within our plan we want to work on these things. After we talk about our priority concerns, we'll later talk about our priority areas so we can also focus on specific parts of the watershed looking at those concerns. So what we had talked about today, and I should mention, Dami, if you can maybe move down to just past the letter that Melissa had put together for us. I think it's page 7. Oh, it's going to be after Troy's though. I'm sorry. So it got moved. Yeah. So those are the pages. Actually, nope, go up from there. The last page is page 30. So keep going up. It would be the letter that why don't we start at the table, actually? Oh, nope, go down one, page 19. There we go, thank you. So in the public meeting, so starting at this page in the packet, in the next pages after this, the information that was recorded from the public meetings is pulled together. And there's a series of tables and graphs showing what those that attended the public meetings, where their priority concerns were. So they had activities where folks voted on those. And then what we decided to do as a group is kind of do the same thing within this setting. So that way, when I go back to the meeting or Commissioner Pint goes back to the meeting, we can say, these are the priorities for Scott County. And it's something that we've talked about it as a group. So it's not just myself or Commissioner Pint saying that these are our priorities. So what Melissa put together for us was the priorities out of our plan, which are in blue here. And then she also added the priorities that came up at the public meeting. So that way we could take a look at all of those and then say, okay, out of these, which ones do we want to say are our biggest priorities? And we can put those towards the top. And a few of those, so the ones in black, the first one in black, surface water to groundwater connection, that came up at a public meeting. But we're just going to wrap that in groundwater protection, which was already one of our priorities, just to kind of limit any overlap. And that's what I'll say to introduce, I guess, this part of the packet, because we do have a exercise that we're going to run through, but that's on our next new business item. So I'll stop here and just see if anybody has any questions about just the One Watershed, One Plan approach, or any of the priorities that we have listed here, maybe what they are, or why we're doing this. Any questions like that, we can talk through that before we get into the exercise.
Commissioner Weaver, this is Commissioner Pint. I'll just make a couple of observations. I found it very interesting that our priorities from the past, which are in blue, and then you look at what they came up with in terms of the black additions, but for the most part, the additions that they came up with were pretty much covered already by our existing priorities, right? Safety due to contaminated drinking water, well, we've got that pretty well covered, I think, up on top. lack of shareholder understanding of the connections, that I think we're covering with our education outreach program quite well. And then the lack of coordination, I'm not sure whoever put that out there, the priority understands. I think our staff does an excellent job of coordinating and understanding the various organizations and jurisdictions, and which grants we can go after, et cetera, et cetera. So that one might be more a case of people not maybe understanding, but I'm pretty comfortable that our staff is doing an excellent job in that area.
Yep, and that brings up an excellent point. So the community meetings would have been anyone in the whole watershed, watershed one planning area, which includes Le Sueur and what am I missing here? I was going to bring up the map. The other county to the south.
It's Rice County, Le
Is it
Sueur.
the corner of Rice? Yeah. Okay. So those comments might have come from people, or they just aren't aware of the work that's being done too. So good point. Okay, if there are no further questions, I'm going to move on to new business and have us work through this exercise. It should be pretty quick. If you do have or if you're online, you can use the computer that you're using. Otherwise, this will work on a phone too. So I'm going to throw into chat a website that you're going to want to go to. So you can go to menti.com, and I'm going to have you enter in a code, and it will allow you to prioritize your top 3 is what I would like you to think about. Get this code in here.
And Commissioner Weaver, just to
Yes.
clarify, we do want everybody to participate. So we're inviting everybody who is attending the meeting today, including our partners. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yep, I just hadn't gotten there yet. So it can be everyone, even staff. While this isn't another public meeting that was planned, the thought behind this was since this is a public forum and anyone can attend, we might as well take advantage of that anyone else who is on can certainly jump on the website and pick their priorities. So yeah, thanks for sharing what that looks like, Dami, too. So what you do, you can prioritize all 12. I suggest that you pick 3. If there are 4 that you really feel should be in the top 4, that's fine. We're not going to police what anyone's entering right now, but go ahead. You can just pick your top 3, and then you can pick submit after that. Once you hit submit, it's going to say enter your email to show results. You don't have to do that. I'll share the results once we have everybody's in. It's just then you're going to end up on their email list, and you're welcome to if you want to, but you don't have to do that. We'll have the results anyway. And anyone who does not have access to some type of browser to be able to do this, just hang tight and we'll check in and then add those in towards once we give people a few minutes to vote on these. We have a way around that where we can get people added in manually too. So I'd say maybe just take a couple minutes to go in, enter that information in, and then I'll put up the then I'll check if anybody isn't able to enter, and then I'll put up the results for everyone.
Do you have the code yet for the meeting?
Yep, I put it into the chat. So it is 4634-1774.
Can you try that again, please? 4?
Yep, 4634-1774.
Got it.
Okay, give maybe another minute here. Okay, is anyone attempting to access and not able to get access that could use some troubleshooting before we manually enter?
Commissioner Weaver,
Yes.
this is Joe Phil. I'm driving down the road, so I'm unable to participate at this time.
Okay.
I apologize.
Would you like us to read them off and you can select them manually and we can enter them for you? There's about 12. So,
Sure.
okay. So I will work on that. So you guys will hear us talking in the
If I don't want to
background.
delay, I just don't want, okay, that's good. I just don't want to delay the meeting.
Nope, that's okay.
That's
We
fine.
figured we'd have to do some by hand. So that's okay. So
All right,
let
thank
me-
you.
Yep, log into where I want to be. Okay, so the different options are surface water quality protection, human health and safety, public safety due to contaminated drinking water, flooding, aquatic habitat, lack of stakeholder understanding, protection of existing habitat, groundwater protection, terrestrial habitat, soil health, aquatic biota, and surface water quality restoration.
Oh my gosh.
I know, that's what I was gonna say, I'll have to read them out.
Yeah, I would say public safety is one.
Okay,
There was 2 public safeties, correct?
there's a public safety due to contaminated drinking water, and then I think that was only, there was a human health and safety.
Yeah, that's number 2.
Okay,
And then there was runoff, correct?
yep, there's surface water quality protection and surface water quality restoration.
Those are pretty close.
Yep, so oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just gonna say, and for anybody who's wondering, the difference is gonna be, protection is it already has a higher level of water. It already has a higher level of water quality and we want to protect that. Whereas restoration, it is not very good water quality and we want to fix it.
Well, that's a tough one. Go with, for me, the second one. For my 3, thank you.
Oh, which was the second one? Was that, restoration, right?
Yes.
Or we
correct.
want to fix it? Okay. Okay, I'll submit those. Does anybody else need more time or does anyone else not have access that they'd like to get it, where they'd like to have us enter them in? Okay, not hearing anyone. So then if I'm able to share my screen, I can put up what we came up with, if that's okay, Dami. I think it'll just steal it from you when I do. So. Okay, if folks can see that, this is what we came up with. So it was a pretty good spread, it looks like. And the nice thing about what this will do is even though we only picked 3, it still, stacked them all for us. So there was just more people that said surface water quality protection as their first. So it looks like we came up with surface water quality protection, groundwater protection, and soil health as our top 3. But what I would plan to do is bring this all back to the One Watershed, One Plan in case we go further than this, more than 3, or, if there's some back and forth, we're trying to decide between a couple of them. The other lower ones might come into play too, so. Any questions, comments, or anything else?
Commissioner Weaver, this is Melissa. I just have one comment, just for the group. It will be at the November WPC meeting that we will come to everyone with helping prioritize priority water bodies or priority locations in the plan.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if you're saying that for sure, if you're asking, but I'm pretty sure it's November that we're going to plan to do that.
That's when we'd be ready to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we might want to talk about that next month in October so that we're also ready for that discussion. And that's going to be, again, picking the areas. So if we want to pick a whole watershed, or if we want to pick a lake or something like that, then we'll need to prioritize those areas too. Okay, that's all I had on this, unless there were more questions. I will send a screen grab of these results to Vanessa and Melissa to just so you have it if it's useful, or probably for the meeting notes. So I'll send them to you too, Dami.
Thank you.
All right, so then I think we can come back to our agenda and move. Oh, we have an action item. It looks like that's an action item. So then with that said, I guess the motion would be to bring these priorities back to the one watershed, one plan meeting as our priority concerns.
Correct. That was the hope.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a motion to bring these priority concerns back to the meeting, and I can put them back up too if it's needed. Do we have further discussion that folks would like to have?
Commissioner Weaver, this is Commissioner Pent. I think it'd be maybe more desirable if somebody other than you or I made the motion. That's why I'm kind of being quiet here too.
I agree.
This is Commissioner Casilius. I'll make a motion that you would bring these WPC priorities back to the One Watershed, One Plan Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Casilius. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Schmidt, I'll second that.
Thank you, commissioners. I'll do roll. Commissioner Weaver.
Aye.
Commissioner Pint.
Aye.
Commissioner Casilius.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
Commissioner Veerling. Commissioner Veerling. Okay, I'm going to skip it. Commissioner Thill.
Aye.
Doing well. I think we have enough so that the motion has passed. So even if Commissioner Veerling is still on and is trying to unmute, the motion still has passed. So we will bring that back to the next Planning Commission meeting. And with that, we can move on to Ryan's new business. ESC no escrow inspections.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, so this is a joint memo that both the Scott Soil and Water and the WMO are presenting today to the WPC. So it's in regards to, we have an erosion and sediment control program, and with that program, we do reviews of building permits as they come in the door. So a house, an accessory structure like a pole shed, or a pool, or an addition, something where there's land disturbing activities that were to trigger this review, the erosion and sediment control review. If it's a deck, that's not something we would review because the footprint of that is so small. And we have it as two potential options when the review starts. So if a permit comes through the door and it were to be near a stream or a neighboring property or a stormwater feature where the level of concern is higher, we collect an escrow from the applicant, which then is used to cover the inspections of soil and water staff to go out there on a regular basis to inspect, make sure that all the best management practices like your silt fence is up and is functioning properly. And they'll continue those inspections until the property, or I should say the disturbed area, reaches 70% vegetative cover. And at that point, then we can release the escrow back to the applicant, and our end of the permit is done. We do have the option that the reviewer during that time period where the permit comes through the door and they start their review, if they notice that there is no resource concern, it's not near a neighboring property or a stormwater feature or a wetland, for example, they have the ability to waive the escrow. And then what we do is we charge a little higher permit fee, and it's intended to cover one inspection of the property. And that's really to ensure that that post approval, the pole shed didn't move from one end of the property to the other, and now it's near a wetland and there is a higher concern. Or another example would be the footprint of the project expanded considerably from what they had indicated on their plan. And once again, there was a concern that maybe the applicant didn't really show on their plan that now in the field is a concern. And so I just want to establish kind of the background of why we have that in place and the difference between the two. So those no escrow permits, the higher permit fee covers in the Soil and Water's time to perform that one inspection. And roughly 30 to 35% of our permits are these no escrow permits. And so we're running at about, and Troy can interject, we just saw the numbers, we're probably north of 200 permits, but south of 250 for the last few years. Last year was 250, but it seems like that was maybe more of an anomaly, just a higher end year for permits coming in the door. So roughly 65 to 75, 80 permits or so are these no escrow permits. And over the last 5 years, the Soil and Water Office pulled the data, and they have yet to have to go back and perform a second inspection on any of these no escrow permits. So a second inspection would mean that they did go out there, find a concern, and now we have to inspect it regularly because of the resource concern or whatever that they found out there that didn't align with the original permit review that did raise a concern. So they have not had to do that in the last 5 years. So what we're proposing today is what we're wanting is a recommendation from the WPC. Staff is proposing the elimination of the no escrow permits. And what that means is that if staff determines that there isn't a resource concern where we need an inspector to go out and do regular inspections on a permit, we just don't collect the extra amount of funds to perform that one-time typically inspection. And so in the end, what this would do is it reduces permit costs to the applicants because we're going to have just a one flat fee rate for plan reviews, but also our administrative and overhead costs for both the county and the SWCD for completing those inspections, but it would not compromise the program based on the data that we're looking at, that we aren't capturing those potential permits that went above and beyond or changed where they were going to put the structure and then caused a concern. Now, we could certainly go out there if all of a sudden we feel as though there was something or the building inspector notifies us that something is different, it didn't align with the plan. But by and large, and obviously we would not be inspecting those permits. So I hope that gave enough background and clarity, but I am happy to answer any questions regarding this, but it is an action item that we were looking for a recommendation from the WPC. And sorry, I should also interject. Troy, if you have anything, feel free to chime in.
Thanks, Ryan. I'll just I'll just stand by for any questions, but I think you did a good job of explaining everything pretty clearly. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Questions for Ryan on this?
This is Commissioner Casilius, and maybe I'm just being a little thick and not quite getting at what's driving this decision.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casilius. So what's driving it is that we are spending the time going out there to do these inspections. They may be covering some of the costs. They may not really be covering all the costs that are associated with the program for those one-time inspections, and we're not finding that we are gaining anything from those one inspections, that we're not coming across a permit that widely varied from what they put on the plan to where it would have been an escrowed permit had we known everything that the landowner made or the applicant failed to put on the plan. So we're just not seeing the benefit of what the program is supposed to be providing. And so we're just looking to reduce then costs to both us and the applicants.
But another way to put it is, it's not that they don't still need the permit, it's just we don't need to be going out there to inspect it.
Yeah,
We're
so
not
it's more
finding
of
any.
it's more of a sort of a time constraint on your part with other things going on or something. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I mean, it eases up the load for you guys.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So we're not
That's
finding any.
what I assumed. I just wasn't, I just wanted to make sure I had it clear in my head. Thank you.
No, it's a great question.
Yes, thank you. And thanks.
Other questions? So I guess I was kind of wondering too, I'm not really familiar with this. So are these typically areas that are just smaller than what would fall within the MS4 requirements? Is that why we have a whole nother level?
Madam Chair, so yes, we have, I guess, a program established as part of our MS4 program that covers these areas. And so we slightly differ than like a city municipality. There's not tight lots. You can, I guess one great example would be if you have a 30, 40 acre parcel and there's an accessory structure going in an ag field, that's surrounded by all ag or all woods or all any sort of perennial vegetation where the runoff risk to any sort of receiving water is all but eliminated. And that need to go out there and inspect it till we get 70% vegetative cover we're just not seeing that it's necessary.
Yeah.
Right. So in a fully developed watershed or fully developed city, there's pretty much going to be runoff from almost every parcel, right? It's going to impact either adjacent property owners or resource. And so the threshold for triggering a permit is pretty small. Most even sheds at that point will trigger a permit and have some erosion sediment control to a certain point. We have a little bit of a different environment here, right? Where we have a lot of large lots, open ag areas where there's really no impact to surrounding properties or resources. So we do have kind of a third unique category, as Ryan said, of potential development that really can have no impact.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I should clarify one more thing as Vanessa was talking about the fee schedule. So we cannot change it in 2022. If we were to make a change, that would have to happen in 2023.
Okay. Okay.
And then one other thing is that this allows us again to allocate our staffing resources towards those inspections that are more necessary. And we can focus more on those properties and developments where we can provide better assistance and not be spread quite so thin.
All right. Any more questions on this one? Or do we have a motion to approve removing this, or excuse me, let's say eliminating the erosion and sediment control inspection requirements for, trying to read the top and put it into a motion that makes sense. Let's see. How about a motion to approve the elimination of erosion and sediment control inspection requirements as outlined in the memo?
Commissioner Weaver, Commissioner Payne, maybe I add one more thing. Our recommendation is to eliminate the inspection for permits that fall into the category of no escrow required. We're eliminating inspection only on those applications that have been determined that there's no escrow requirement.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Does that work, Vanessa?
Yes.
All right. Then do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Casilius. I'll second that motion.
All right, I'll do a roll. Commissioner Weaver?
Aye.
Commissioner Pint?
Aye.
Commissioner Casilius?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Aye.
Commissioner Thill?
Aye.
And Commissioner Veerling?
Aye.
Yay. Okay. Oh, thanks, Commissioners.
Motion has passed.
Commissioner Weaver, Commissioner Payne, can I just get a clarification? Now we've already passed it, but I'm assuming, and I want to be careful of that I'm not assuming something incorrectly here, that is not changing any of the practices that are required to getting a permit. In other words, if a silt fence is required, a silt fence is still required. It's nothing to do with that. It's only the inspection issue that we addressed.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Pint, yes, correct. So even those no escrow permits, there could be landowners that are still indicating that they're going to install a silt fence, and we wouldn't necessarily change that. So it wouldn't change the outcomes of what we're currently doing as far as practice requirements.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
And I feel comfortable with the way we passed the motion.
Okay, great. Well, with that passed, then we just need to adjourn the meeting. So do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Commissioner Beerling, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner Schmidt, I'll second.
All right, Commissioners, I'll take roll. Commissioner Weaver?
Right.
Commissioner Pint?
Aye.
Commissioner Casilius?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Aye.
Commissioner Thill?
Aye.
And Commissioner Veerling?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll see everybody or hear from everybody next month.
Yep, thank you all
Great,
very
thank
much.
you.